In this video, I'll be discussing the real villain in Disney Pixar's Raya and the Last Dragon. Now, we meet some pretty interesting characters in Raya and the Last Dragon. At the end of the movie, we're led to believe one of two things. It's either nobody's fault because too many people contributed to the problem, or it's everybody's fault because too many people contributed to the problem. Either way, it's really hard to blame just one character, right? It absolutely is not, and do not worry, I'm not going to put the burden of the fall of mankind on an obvious hero, then spin it to make him look like the bad guy, or put it on some third-party character we barely see that turns to stone anyway. This first person isn't actually a villain, but he totally set it off. I admire his goals, I really do. Uniting the 5 lands so everyone can live peacefully? That's actually... it's not very realistic. He has a good heart to genuinely believe he can bring people together, even through small acts like sharing a non-poisonous dinner. But if you've seen the movie, you already know how this ends up. Nobody cares about dinners, and the rival lands, despite eating the same meals, are not united at all. And inviting over the other lands and their armies, the single most dangerous act that could destroy all you hold dear, isn't something I'd expect from the wise chief Raya says he is. But that's still not what truly kickstarted the breaking of the Dragon Gem. You want to hold a royal ball with your worst enemies? Go ahead, man. It's not like you have a small daughter or anything. A child that you have decided to give guardianship to, the only thing keeping the Droon in check. A child you have entrusted the fate of humanity to. Yeah, this guy here sat on his butt and thought to himself, I think my 12-year-old girl is ready for this level of responsibility. The first thing this young and very inexperienced kid does is let someone from a rival land, Fang, see the Dragon Gem when she's already described the whole of Fang as aggressive and unwavering, the most dreaded land, and she lets one of them in because she shared a few minor things in common. Like, for real, do you like dragons too? Yes, Raya, that's the deciding factor, apparently. But I can't just blame Raya for this since she is still a child and children don't see things the way adults do. Usually they make friends in minutes and think that all their friends are trustworthy. I'm blaming her father for letting the gem break. He even sheathed his sword when every one of his enemies stood before him ready to take the gem for themselves. As if doing that will eliminate 500 years of distrust. But like I said, he isn't the villain I'm talking about. He just had the worst judgment of any character in the movie, which isn't enough to qualify him as evil or even an antagonist. So let's talk about Raya herself. She appears to be a hero, right? She was way too young and immature to protect the Dragon Gem, and it broke, not her fault. But she is a thief. She stole some sacred dragon map from Fang that was clearly enough to make the princess, Namaari, track her down. Then she attempted to trap Namaari and her followers, who had no choice but to obey Namaari anyway, forever to let them die. They escape, but instead of just continuing to run, what does Raya do? Well, trapping Namaari and letting her starve or suffocate to death didn't work, so Raya tries using bugs to blow her up. And it doesn't just stop at Namaari. She was ready to fight and possibly kill random strangers on her way to the end of the river. She took her father's sword out when she saw human-like figures, immediately assuming they're alive, and only put it back when she realized they're stone. What? Wow, Raya, what? Okay, but hey, at least she's willing to help this random baby. Instant redemption, in spite of probably killing or injuring people in the past. Moving on, let's see our spine warrior, Tong. I'm just kidding, too. There's literally nothing bad about this guy. He tied Raya and Sisu up, but didn't even plan to do anything with them. We see an empty crib, an empty village, and he never fights or hurts anyone. He's about as harmless as Captain and/or Chef Boone, who only threw a shrimp tail, but otherwise made the best food he could and took Raya and Sisu to different places without many questions. We do have our little con baby Nui and her 3 ungies. They steal a lot, but otherwise don't really harm anyone. Plus, she's a baby who people keep walking by ignoring. Her family was turned to stone by the Droon, and she has nobody to take care of her except these 3 ungies. She showed interest in making an honest living, and when Boone started feeding her, she didn't try to steal anything from his boat, and happily accepted the food. So yeah, I think we can give baby Nui a pass. Now it's time to look at the character even I've been waiting for, Namaari. It's established very early in the movie that Namaari and Raya are enemies. In fact, Raya tells Sisu that Namaari is the backstabbing Venturi who broke the world. So Raya views all of this as Namaari's fault. Even Screen Rant dubs her the Darth Vader of the movie. And they're not entirely wrong. Or are they? Because at the end of the movie, we do see a turn of events where Sisu is shot with an arrow by Namaari's own hands and dies. falling over a cliff and into the water. We know for a fact that she does die because the water starts to go away, signifying that its last connection to the world has been severed, as Sisu says earlier that dragons bring water, making Sisu truly the last dragon. With the death of Sisu and without water to ward them off, Fang falls under the mercy of the Druun, and many of its citizens turn to stone. The ones that make it out are probably going to turn to stone as well, since the only remaining thing able to ward off the Druun is the fading magic in the Dragon Gem, and let's face it, there's not enough for everybody. Namaari truly has caused humanity's end, which ultimately makes her the villain you completely expected. Also, I'm just kidding again, because for the longest time Namaari was seen as the villain in my eyes too, but redeemed herself when she fixed the gem and saved the world. But that's not the case. People frequently ignore Fang's well-established hierarchy. Despite Namaari being the princess, she doesn't have any control over her land, and she won't until she succeeds her mother, which hasn't happened yet. We see this lack of power in the movie more than a few times. In the beginning, Namaari is used as a pawn to find the Dragon Gem and tell Fang where it is with her flare. When tracking Raya after she stole the map, Namaari doesn't intercept Raya, but instead goes back to Fang to receive new orders. Namaari had to beg to take the royal army to stop Raya at Spine. When Sisu finally reveals herself to Namaari, Namaari isn't the one to report the event, it was the generals she was supposed to have been given command over. So when Namaari pulled out her crossbow, it wasn't her choice to do so. She wasn't allowed to give Raya a choice, but to hand both Sisu and the other gem pieces to her. And who does she take her orders from? That's right, the real villain is Namaari's mom. Her mom was not at all concerned with the fate of all humanity and made that blatantly clear when talking to her daughter about the rest of the world forgiving Fang. Now, Fang could have redeemed itself in a number of ways, but instead she chose to have her daughter be a mediator and bring a weapon to kill Raya if necessary, then take the other gem pieces and Sisu, not knowing what might happen in the process. The generals who reported the sight of a dragon only saw this dragon in attack mode, vicious and growling before they fled, so their report would have sounded more dangerous than Namaari's, who is shut down before she's even given the chance to give her report. Namaari's mother sends her daughter out, not caring about a potential dragon attack if Raya is hurt or threatened at all. Only Raya knows the details about Sisu, but if legend is to be believed, all others know is that Sisu is the only hope the world has. If Namaari's mom really cared about fixing the world, she would have given the gem pieces to Raya and backed off instead of risking everyone's last hope of surviving an undefeatable soul-stealing plague, but she didn't. This is some grade A villainy going on here, making Namaari's mother the true villain in Raya and the Last Dragon. But I'm not done yet. Throughout this video, I didn't mention the evilest characters of all, the Druun. Well, that's because they're not actually evil. Sisu describes them as a plague born from human discord. Humans made these monsters, but I can't even decide if they're alive. They look like ethereal energy blobs, but they're also mindless drones. At first glance, it looks like they're turning everything into stone, but when I really stop to think about it, they're not. Sure, they took the lives of Nui's Unkies, but they never targeted them. The whole movie was spent on targeting humans who made them, and dragons who protected the humans. But look at the plants. They're thriving. The plants wouldn't be able to survive without nutrition, and animals make great fertilizer, which can only mean the Druun aren't targeting all life. If anything, they might be good guys trying to solve the planet's problem by getting rid of the humans fighting on it or something, I don't know. I do know it's a good thing you guys aren't villainous little traitors who, won't hit that subscribe button